There's a growing concern about the rising number of police officers who are being killed. According to the South African Police Service, 31 officers were killed between April and June this year, both on and off duty. Police unions have condemned these acts and are calling on legislative amendments to ensure that police are better protected and that police killings become an act of treason. Let's bring in POPCRU spokesperson Richard Mamabolo now, joining us live here on Today this hour. Good afternoon, sir. Welcome to Today, and thank you very much for your time. I mean, each time we hear about the crime stats, we speak to you and your peers in the police service about the number of murders of police. Doesn't seem to be ending. Just last week, I think about seven officers were attacked brutally in different parts of the country. You calling for better protection. Do you really believe that changing the law will assist?
Yes, Brad, and we think that would be a part of the solutions. Just remember that since the beginning of the year up until now, we've lost 64 police officers, including the ones that were killed just over the weekend. So it's a trend that continues to continue unabated. And we feel that through making some legislative changes, there could be some form of improvement. And of course, I think one of the areas that we looked into with when we had our policing indaba was to say that we need to obviously ensure that the government actually, well, rather the ministry, puts forth a proposition that the killing of police should be considered treasonous because it's clearly an act against the state. But as well as looking into, for example, the Criminal Procedure Act. Remember that part of the Criminal Procedure Act 49 was instituted in 1977. That was during the apartheid era. And of course, moving into a democratic era, we believe that there are certain aspects of that Criminal Procedure Act which needs to be adjusted so that they are in line with the democratic dispensation, especially around how police can effect arrest in protecting them. Because when we've analyzed some of these police killings over the years, we've noted that in most cases when police are killed or are harmed or attacked, it would be in instances where they're trying to effect arrests. And of course, currently there are more other challenges with the staff decline of the SAPS. Just in the past 2 years, we've lost over 11,000 police officers. And in Gauteng alone, a number of over 2,000 vehicles, police vehicles, have been decommissioned. So those are some of the challenges we are facing with uneven allocation of resources. And the more our police officers work in smaller numbers, the more attacks that they are likely susceptible to meet.
Okay, to change the law is a process, as we know, because only Parliament can approve new laws and bring in new laws. That could be in the medium, long term. In the short term, what kind of measures would you and your colleagues like to see to better protect yourselves?
Yeah, look, we think that our members should work in bigger numbers. They should obviously be aware of their surroundings. And of course, we also saying firmly that police officers cannot die with their firearms on. Those are short-term interventions, of course, but they would need to be complemented by a government actually ensuring that there are no budget cuts. Just last week, there was an instruction issued by the Finance Ministry about containing budgets. And of course, today again, we received a communication from the SAPS indicating that they would be implementing such measures. We feel that such measures are not well calculated because it goes against the principle which the president has committed to say that we need to have violent crimes by half within the next decade. So at a time when we need more resources to ensure that there's sufficient training for police officers, to ensure that they've got proper utensils and tools to fight crime, you've got the Finance Ministry cutting down on those budgets. So those are some of the things that we'll definitely be engaging with the minister about to look into how we can actually overcome such challenges. So I think it's a collective effort really. Otherwise, if we were to rely on the ministry alone, not much will be done. But as well, it's quite important to get the involvement of communities so that they then work closely with police in actually ensuring that we prevent such challenges.
Yeah, you've mentioned the law. You want some changes there. You want the minister to start that process. You want the killing of an officer to be declared as treasonous. Would that then mean it will have to be, the harsher sentence would have to be meted out?
Most definitely. Treason, of course, is an act against the state. And of course, I think that would obviously ensure that there are harsher measures meted out at those who would be found guilty. But as well, we are not only relying on that one solution. And as you correctly say, that it's a long-term solution because it still has to go through processes, but it's an initiative in the right direction,
yeah.
we believe.
What other resources? I mean, you've mentioned that police, they need to be aware of their surroundings. They used to work in bigger groups. And for that to be enabled, you need bigger budget.
Most definitely. I think there have been budget cuts over the past 3 years. And unfortunately, you know, many of our police officers are backyard dwellers, you know. They do not qualify for RDP houses. They do not qualify for bonded houses as well. So they find themselves having to travel on a daily basis amongst the communities and staying behind as back dwellers. That also brings a lot of vulnerabilities because, like we said, that in most cases, police officers are killed for their firearms and of course, the cases that they're investigating. So having a police officer using public transport puts them at risk already because of the uniform that they identified with. Load shedding as well has been a main factor because at times when it gets dark, especially during the nights, police making patrols become vulnerable to such attacks as well.
Yeah, and a point that comes up now and again when you talk about the matters of police is the support you get, especially they and their families. Not just psychosocial support, but financial support. What's the situation currently?
Well, what we have managed to do now, it's a continuing process within the bargaining council, was to ensure that the danger allowance is increased from 400 to 700, but we are still not satisfied. We are working towards ensuring that it gets to 1,500, as had already been agreed within the SSBC. But unfortunately as well, you know, I think on a yearly basis, you've got commemorative services wherein the minister and the president address members of those families. The death allowance is still 250, and in most cases, it cannot sustain the families of the deceased officers.
Yeah. Is there enough support? There's no enough support, therefore, for widows and widowers in the police. Would you like to see that change? I mean, you mentioned 700 Rand as a danger allowance. That sounds little to me.
Most definitely, it's quite little. We were supposed to be standing at 1,500 at this moment, but of course, engagements are still continuing. So, but it's better than nothing as compared to it having remained at 400 rands. And of course, I think one of the things that we want to see is that there should be a death insurance. You know, despite the death allowance that is offered to widows and widowers, we think that immediately when a person joins the service, there should be that insurance which would ensure that in the case of their death, their families can actually be taken to school, and of course they can also be assisted to get houses. So government employee housing scheme is one of the important issues that are on the table currently, and we're hoping that some of these matters can be achieved sooner rather than later.
Okay, Ndate Mamabolo, as we conclude in less than a minute, you mentioned community support. What would you like to see community do to help stop cop killings?
In our recent policing endeavor, we looked into ways in which we could partner with communities and, of course, strengthen community policing forums. So those are some of the areas which we're looking at fostering, because I think there has been a breakdown in relationship between the SAPS and most community policing forums, which is the point that was raised sharply by the portfolio committee in Parliament. And I think based on our engagements, we are looking into ways in which we can improve these relations. I think that will also yield positive results into the future.
Okay. Thank you very much for your time on this very important matter. That's Mamabolo there. And Ndate Mamabolo, he's of course speaking on behalf of trade union POPCRU.